Elon Musk was not an ordinary man. He had always been someone who asked questions, lots of them. From the time he was a boy growing up in Pretoria, South Africa, Elon's mind worked differently. While other kids played outside or watched cartoons, he would sit with books about science and technology, dreaming of ways to change the world. As he grew older, those dreams became reality. He built electric cars that didn't pollute the planet, created rockets that could fly to space and return safely, and even imagined colonizing Mars. But one evening, something unusual happened. Something that made him put aside his usual projects and dive into a mystery far removed from rockets or robots. It all started when Elon was scrolling through old news articles on his tablet. He wasn't looking for anything specific. It was just one of those quiet nights where his restless brain needed something to focus on. Then, buried deep within a list of outdated headlines, he saw something that caught his attention. It was a short mention of Hillary Clinton's lobbying activities during her time as Secretary of State. At first glance, it seemed like nothing special, just another story about politics. But something about it felt off. Why was this particular piece of information so small and hidden? Why did it feel like no one wanted people to notice it? Elon leaned back in his chair, staring at the screen. His curiosity was piqued. Over the years, he had learned to trust his instincts. When something didn't add up, there was usually a reason. So, instead of brushing it off, he decided to dig deeper. That decision marked the beginning of a journey that would take him down a rabbit hole filled with secrets, danger, and unexpected twists. The next day, Elon gathered a small team of trusted individuals. These weren't just random employees, they were some of the brightest minds he knew. There was Sarah, a data analyst who could find patterns in chaos. Mark, a former journalist skilled at uncovering hard-to-find information. And Priya, a cybersecurity expert who could protect their work from prying eyes. Together, they formed a tight-knit group dedicated to finding answers. Elon explained what he had stumbled upon and why he thought it was worth investigating. Though skeptical at first, the team agreed to help. After all, if anyone could make sense of tangled webs, it was Elon Musk. Their initial plan was simple. Start by collecting publicly available records related to Hillary Clinton's political career. They looked at campaign contributions, donations, to her charitable foundation, and any connections she might have had with big corporations. What they found surprised them. Large sums of money flowed into accounts linked to Clinton's campaigns and foundations, but the sources of these funds were often vague or unclear. Some donations came from multinational companies operating in industries directly affected by U.S. policies, energy, pharmaceuticals, defense. On paper, everything seemed legal, but the sheer scale of the transactions raised eyebrows. As they dug further, patterns began to emerge. Certain companies appeared repeatedly, their names popping up in connection with both financial contributions and favorable policy decisions. For example, one energy firm stood out. Before Hillary Clinton became Secretary of State, this company struggled to secure contracts abroad. However, after diplomatic negotiations led by Clinton, the same firm landed deals worth billions of dollars. Coincidence? Maybe. But the timing was suspicious enough to warrant closer inspection. To better understand the situation, the team expanded their search. They examined emails, memos, and public statements made by Clinton and her associates. Some documents hinted at cozy relationships between government officials and corporate executives. Others suggested efforts to suppress negative press or discredit critics. Each new discovery added another layer to the puzzle, making the picture more complicated and more troubling. Despite their progress, Elon couldn't shake the feeling that they were missing something. The pieces fit together too neatly, almost as if someone had arranged them that way on purpose. Was this just routine politics, or was there something darker lurking beneath the surface? To answer that question, they needed to go beyond publicly available records. They needed access to classified documents, private communications, and confidential agreements. And getting that kind of information wouldn't be easy. One evening, while reviewing notes in his office, Elon realized the enormity of what they were dealing with. This wasn't just about exposing corruption. It was about challenging powerful forces that thrived in secrecy. If they succeeded, they could spark a national conversation about ethics in politics and accountability in leadership. But if they failed, or worse, if they got caught, it could mean disaster for everyone involved. Still, Elon refused to back down. He believed in the power of truth, no matter how uncomfortable it might be. With renewed determination, he turned back to his computer, ready to keep digging. Over the next few weeks, the team worked tirelessly. They cross-referenced data, analyzed trends, and followed every lead, no matter how small. Slowly but surely, they uncovered threads connecting influential figures across industries and governments. It was like unraveling a giant knot, each tug revealing more complexity than expected. By the end of the first phase of their investigation, one thing was clear. This scandal wasn't just about money or politics. It was about power, the kind of power that operated in shadows, untouched by laws or morals. And yet, despite everything they had uncovered, Elon knew they were only scratching the surface. The real challenge lay ahead, turning scattered clues into undeniable proof. Only then could they expose the truth to the world. But as he sat there late at night, surrounded by stacks of papers and glowing screens, Elon allowed himself a moment of reflection. Whatever happened next, he thought, this journey would test not only his intellect but also his courage. And he was ready for whatever came his way. The investigation into Hillary Clinton's lobbying activities was like trying to untangle a massive web. Every thread they pulled seemed to lead to another knot, more complicated than the last. Elon Musk and his team had already uncovered suspicious patterns, large sums of money flowing into accounts tied to Clinton's campaigns and foundations, often from companies that stood to benefit from U.S. policies. But now, it was time to dig deeper. If they wanted to expose the truth, they needed to follow the money trail, and that meant going beyond public records. Elon knew this part of the investigation would be tricky. Money had a way of disappearing when people didn't want it traced. It could move through banks in different countries, bounce between shell companies, and vanish into tax havens before anyone noticed. That's why he turned to Priya, the cybersecurity expert on his team. She was brilliant at tracking digital footprints, finding hidden connections, and breaking through layers of encryption. With her help, they began analyzing financial transactions linked to Clinton's network, looking for anything unusual. What they found shocked them. Millions of dollars were being funneled through offshore accounts in places like Panama, the Cayman Islands, and Switzerland. These weren't just random payments, they followed a pattern. For example, one arms manufacturer donated $10 million to a charity associated with Clinton's foundation. Around the same time, the company secured a lucrative arms deal worth billions, thanks to diplomatic negotiations led by Clinton herself. Another corporation, a pharmaceutical giant, made similar contributions shortly before receiving approval for a drug that faced heavy scrutiny in other markets. The timing was too perfect to ignore, but proving these connections wasn't easy. The companies involved used complex methods to hide their tracks. Payments were split into smaller amounts, sent through multiple intermediaries and labeled as consulting fees or charitable donations. Even when Elon's team managed to trace the money back to its source, they struggled to prove intent. Was this corruption, or was it simply smart business? Without solid evidence, their findings risked being dismissed as speculation. To solve this problem, Elon decided to use technology. He tapped into SpaceX's advanced computational systems and Tesla's artificial intelligence capabilities. Together, his team developed algorithms designed to detect anomalies in financial data. These tools could analyze millions of transactions in seconds, flagging anything out of the ordinary. They also created visual maps showing how money moved between entities, making it easier to spot patterns. Slowly but surely, the picture became clearer. What emerged was a sophisticated system of influence peddling, a network where corporations paid for access, favors, and decisions that benefited their bottom line. One discovery stood out above the rest. an obscure energy firm called SolarGen Tech. Before Hillary Clinton became Secretary of State, SolarGen Tech was struggling to stay afloat. Its profits were low and its reputation was shaky, but everything changed after Clinton took office. Within months, the company started landing contracts overseas, including deals worth hundreds of millions of dollars. When Elon's team dug deeper, they found that SolarGen Tech had donated heavily to Clinton's foundation during this period. Even more alarming, internal emails revealed discussions about securing favorable terms for the company in exchange for continued support. At first, Elon thought they had hit the jackpot. This was proof, or so he believed. But as they reviewed, the evidence doubts crept in. While the documents showed a clear link between donations and contracts, they didn't explicitly state that a bribe had taken place. Legally speaking, there was still room for interpretation. And without direct evidence of wrongdoing, exposing the scandal would be difficult. Critics could argue that the donations were coincidental, or that the contracts were awarded based on merit. Elon knew they needed something stronger, a smoking gun that left no room for doubt. As the days turned into weeks, the pressure mounted. Elon spent long hours locked in his office, poring over spreadsheets and legal documents. His mind raced with questions. How far did this network extend? Who else was involved? And most importantly, how could they expose it without putting themselves in danger? He couldn't afford to make mistakes, not with stakes this high. Meanwhile, tensions within the team began to rise. Sarah, the data analyst, grew frustrated with the lack of progress. "We're chasing ghosts," she said one evening, slamming her laptop shut. "Every time we think we've got something concrete, it slips away." Mark, the journalist, tried to reassure her. "That's how these things work," he said. "You have to keep digging until you find the truth. But I'll admit, this is harder than I expected." Despite the challenges, Elon refused to give up. He reminded himself why he had started this journey in the first place. Corruption thrived in darkness, Shield LG itself from scrutiny. By shining a light on it, he hoped to inspire change, to show people that even the most powerful figures could be held accountable. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Strange things kept happening around him. Emails disappeared from his inbox. Files saved on secure servers suddenly vanished. Even his phone acted strangely, freezing or restarting without explanation. At first, he dismissed these incidents as technical glitches. But deep down, he suspected something more sinister was at play. One night, while reviewing documents at home, Elon received a chilling message. His phone buzzed softly, lighting up the dark room. On the screen was a single line of text: "Stop digging or face consequences." The message came from an unknown number, leaving no trace of its origin. For a moment, Elon froze, staring at the words. Then, anger replaced fear. Whoever was behind this thought they could scare him into silence, but they underestimated him. Instead of backing down, Elon doubled his efforts. He tightened security protocols, encrypting files and using burner phones to communicate with his team. He also reached out to trusted allies, asking for advice on how to proceed safely. Among those allies was Edward Snowden, the whistleblower who had exposed global surveillance programs years earlier. Though living in exile, Snowden agreed to help, offering tips on how to protect sensitive information from hackers and spies. He warned Elon about government surveillance tactics and suggested ways to stay off the radar. "Whatever you do," Snowden told him, "don't trust anyone, not even your closest friends. People will betray you if they think it'll save their own skin." Snowden's words weighed heavily on Elon. He realized that exposing corruption wasn't just about gathering evidence. It was about survival. Every step forward brought new risks, forcing him to weigh the costs against the potential benefits. Yet, despite the dangers, Elon remained determined. He believed the truth mattered, not just for justice, but for the future of democracy itself. If powerful individuals could operate above the law without consequence, what hope was there for ordinary citizens? By the end of this phase of the investigation, Elon's team had built a strong case. They had identified key players, mapped out financial networks, and documented suspicious activities. But they still lacked the final piece of the puzzle, the undeniable proof that would convince the world. Elon knew the next steps would be the hardest yet. Going public meant risking everything, his reputation, his businesses, even his freedom. But staying silent meant letting the system win. And that was something Elon Musk could never accept. As he sat alone in his office late one night, surrounded by stacks of papers and glowing computer screens, Elon allowed himself a rare moment of reflection. This journey had tested him in ways he never imagined. It had forced him to confront uncomfortable truths about power, greed, and human nature. But it had also reminded him why he fought so hard for innovation, not just in technology, but in transparency and accountability. Whatever happened next, he vowed to keep pushing forward, because sometimes the hardest battles were the ones worth fighting. As Elon Musk and his team delved deeper into the tangled web of Hillary Clinton's lobbying scandal, the stakes grew higher with each passing day. What started as a quest for truth had now turned into something far more dangerous, a high-stakes game where every move could have life-altering consequences. The warning message Elon received, "Stop digging or face consequences," wasn't just an empty threat. It was a clear signal that powerful forces were watching, and they weren't afraid to strike back. Elon knew he couldn't ignore the risks. He had seen enough scandals in his lifetime to understand how those in power operated. They didn't play fair. They silenced dissenters, manipulated narratives, and crushed anyone who dared challenge their dominance. Yet instead of backing down, Elon found himself more determined than ever. If anything, the threats only fueled his resolve. Corruption thrived on fear, and he refused to let it win. To protect themselves, Elon tightened security measures across the board. Files were encrypted multiple times, stored on air-gapped computers disconnected from the internet to prevent hacking. Communication within the team shifted entirely to secure channels, encrypted messaging apps, burner phones, and even handwritten notes delivered in person. Elon also hired private security guards to monitor his properties, ensuring no one could sneak in unnoticed. Despite these precautions, paranoia lingered. Every shadow felt darker, every sound louder. Even routine tasks like checking emails or attending meetings became nerve-wracking experiences. Meanwhile, the investigation continued at full throttle. With Priya leading the charge, the team uncovered alarming evidence suggesting a coordinated effort to suppress information related to Clinton's activities. Internal memos revealed discussions among her inner circle about strategies to discredit whistleblowers and journalists probing similar leads. One document detailed plans to discredit an investigative reporter who had been working on a story about questionable arms deals brokered during Clinton's tenure as Secretary of State. The memo outlined tactics such as planting false stories, pressuring advertisers to pull funding from the journalist's publication, and even hiring PR firms to smear their credibility. These revelations sent chills down Elon's spine. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about control. Those involved weren't content with bending rules. They sought to eliminate anyone who posed a threat to their empire. And now, Elon realized, he had become one of those threats. Strangely enough, strange incidents began occurring around Elon's operations. Cyber attacks targeted SpaceX servers, causing temporary outages that disrupted critical projects. At Tesla factories, equipment malfunctioned without explanation, delaying production timelines. Rumors spread online accusing Elon of financial mismanagement, though none of them held water under scrutiny. Even his personal life came under scrutiny, with tabloids publishing exaggerated stories about his relationships and mental health. While some dismissed these events as coincidence, Elon saw them for what they truly were: calculated attempts to distract him and undermine his credibility. Despite the mounting pressure, Elon pressed on. He reminded himself why this fight mattered, not just for justice, but for accountability. If powerful individuals could operate above the law without consequence, what hope was there for ordinary citizens? This wasn't just about exposing corruption, it was about protecting democracy itself. Still, he couldn't deny the toll it was taking on him. Sleepless nights became the norm, his mind racing with worst-case scenarios. Friends noticed the change in him, his usual confidence replaced by a quiet intensity, his sharp wit dulled by exhaustion. Yet, when asked if he planned to stop, his answer was always the same. No. One breakthrough came unexpectedly. While reviewing archived emails from Clinton's foundation, Mark stumbled upon a series of exchanges between key figures discussing donations tied to specific policy outcomes. In one email chain, a corporate executive thanked a Clinton aide for facilitating favorable terms following a major contribution. Another conversation hinted at efforts to block investigations into controversial decisions made during Clinton's time in office. These emails weren't conclusive proof, but they added weight to the growing pile of circumstantial evidence. Encouraged by this progress, Elon decided to take a bold step. He reached out to Julian Assange, the founder of WikiLeaks, who had spent years exposing government secrets from exile. Though controversial, Assange possessed invaluable expertise in handling classified information and navigating legal minefields. After several encrypted video calls, Assange agreed to collaborate, offering access to documents that corroborated parts of Elon's findings. Among them was a leaked report detailing how foreign governments funneled money through intermediaries to gain influence over U.S. policies. Some of these funds ended up in accounts linked to Clinton's foundation, raising questions about potential conflicts of interest. With each new discovery, the picture grew clearer and uglier. This wasn't merely a case of unethical behavior. It was systemic corruption involving politicians, corporations, and even foreign entities. The scale of it was staggering, implicating not just Hillary Clinton but entire networks designed to maintain the status quo. For Elon, the implications were sobering. Exposing this scandal wouldn't just anger a few powerful people, it would shake the foundations of institutions many believed were untouchable. Yet despite the gravity of their findings, Elon faced a dilemma. How could they release the information without putting themselves in greater danger? Going public meant stepping into the spotlight, making them vulnerable to retaliation, but staying silent meant letting the system win. After much deliberation, Elon devised a plan. Instead of relying on traditional media outlets, which might shy away from publishing sensitive material, he decided to bypass them entirely. Using Twitter, his favorite platform, he would live-stream the entire dossier, presenting the evidence directly to the public. This approach ensured maximum visibility while minimizing the risk of censorship. Before executing the plan, Elon gathered his team for a final meeting. The mood was tense but resolute. Everyone understood the risks involved, yet no one hesitated to support him. As they reviewed the timeline and logistics, Elon addressed them with quiet determination. "This isn't just about us," he said. "It's about showing the world that no one is above accountability. Not politicians, not billionaires, not anyone. We're doing this because it's right." The night before the scheduled broadcast, Elon barely slept. He rehearsed his presentation, double-checked the encryption on sensitive files, and mentally prepared for whatever might come next. When morning arrived, he felt a mix of fear and excitement coursing through him. This was it, the moment of truth. As the clock struck noon, Elon logged onto Twitter and began the live stream. Behind him, screens displayed graphs, charts, and excerpts from leaked documents. Millions tuned in, watching as he methodically laid out the case against Hillary Clinton and her network. Within minutes, social media erupted. Hashtags like #Clinton Scandal and Elon Musk exposes truth trended globally. Supporters hailed Elon as a hero fighting for transparency, while critics accused him of recklessness and bias. Lawmakers called for investigations and protesters took to the streets demanding answers. For Elon, the reaction was overwhelming but validating. After months of relentless work, the truth was finally out there, for better or worse. Yet, as he sat alone in his office later that evening, reflecting on the day's events, he knew the battle was far from over. Powerful forces wouldn't go down without a fight, and the road ahead promised to be fraught with challenges. But for now, he allowed himself a small measure of satisfaction. Against all odds, They had succeeded in shining a light on the shadows. And sometimes, that was enough. The live-streamed exposé of Hillary Clinton's lobbying scandal sent shockwaves across the globe. Within hours, Elon Musk became both a celebrated hero and a vilified figure. Supporters praised him for his courage in uncovering corruption, while critics accused him of orchestrating a politically motivated attack. The divide was stark. Some saw him as a champion of transparency, others as a reckless provocateur. But one thing was certain: Elon had ignited a firestorm that couldn't be ignored. As the world grappled with the revelations, Elon knew he couldn't fight this battle alone. Exposing such entrenched systems required allies, people who shared his vision for accountability and weren't afraid to stand up to powerful adversaries. He reached out to individuals and organizations known for challenging authority, hoping to build a coalition strong enough to withstand the inevitable backlash. 1 of his first calls went to Edward Snowden, the whistleblower living in exile after exposing global surveillance programs. Despite their vastly different backgrounds, Elon respected Snowden's commitment to truth and transparency. Over an encrypted video call, they discussed strategies for protecting sensitive data and countering potential smear campaigns. Snowden advised Elon to expect aggressive pushback from governments and corporations alike. "They'll try to destroy your credibility," Snowden warned. "Stay focused on the facts, and don't let them distract you." Snowden also introduced Elon to digital tools designed to safeguard classified information. These included advanced encryption software and decentralized storage systems that made it nearly impossible to hack or alter documents. With Snowden's guidance, Elon fortified his operation, ensuring the evidence remained secure even as public scrutiny intensified. Another unexpected ally emerged in Julian Assange, founder of WikiLeaks. Though controversial, Assange had years of experience navigating legal challenges and handling explosive leaks. During their conversations, Assange emphasized the importance of timing and precision when releasing sensitive material. "You can't just dump everything at once," he cautioned. "Control the narrative by strategically rolling out key pieces of evidence." Following Assange's advice, Elon's team began organizing the documents into digestible segments, each accompanied by detailed explanations to prevent misinterpretation. While these partnerships strengthened Elon's position, not everyone rallied behind him. Critics launched fierce attacks, questioning his motives and integrity. Mainstream media outlets dismissed the scandal as a conspiracy theory fueled by political bias. Some accused Elon of using the allegations to settle personal scores or divert attention from controversies surrounding his own businesses. Others claimed the investigation lacked concrete proof, labeling it speculative and unfounded. Even within Elon's inner circle, tensions simmered. Friends and colleagues urged caution, warning him about the dangers of taking on such powerful forces. "You're playing with fire," one close associate told him during a private meeting. "These people have resources you can't imagine. Are you ready for what comes next?" Elon listened quietly, nodding occasionally but never wavering in his resolve. He understood the risks but believed the cause was worth it. Corruption thrived when good people stayed silent, and he refused to be complicit in its perpetuation. Public opinion was equally divided. On social media, hashtags like #GottingMuskForTruth trended alongside fake news exposed, reflecting the polarized debate. Protesters gathered outside government buildings, demanding investigations into Clinton's activities. Meanwhile, counter-protests erupted in support of her, dismissing the allegations as baseless attacks orchestrated by political opponents. Lawmakers weighed in too, with some calling for congressional hearings while others dismissed the claims outright. The nation found itself embroiled in heated discussions about ethics, accountability, and the role of money in politics. Despite the chaos, Elon remained steadfast. He understood that exposing corruption wasn't just about presenting evidence, it was about shifting perceptions. To achieve that, he needed to engage directly with the public. He started hosting Q&A sessions on Twitter, answering questions about the investigation and addressing misconceptions head-on. His straightforward approach resonated with many, earning him a loyal following of supporters who admired his willingness to take on powerful institutions. But not all reactions were positive. Anonymous threats poured in daily, ranging from vague warnings to explicit death threats. One message read, "You think you're untouchable? Wait till we make your life hell." Another warned, "Your family won't be safe either." Each threat reinforced the reality of the situation. Elon wasn't just fighting a scandal. He was battling a well-oiled machine designed to protect its interests at any cost. To mitigate these risks, Elon hired additional security personnel to monitor his properties and ensure the safety of his loved ones. He also instructed his team to maintain strict operational secrecy, limiting communication to encrypted channels and avoiding public appearances whenever possible. Despite these precautions, paranoia lingered. Every knock on the door felt ominous. Every phone call suspicious. Even routine tasks like grocery shopping became anxiety-inducing experiences. Yet, amidst the fear and uncertainty, moments of hope emerged. Ordinary citizens inspired by Elon's actions began organizing grassroots movements to demand greater transparency in politics. Activists launched petitions calling for reforms in campaign financing laws, urging lawmakers to address loopholes exploited by wealthy donors. Journalists revisited past stories, uncovering new scandals linked to Clinton's network. For the first time in years, the nation engaged in meaningful conversations about accountability and governance. Elon drew strength from these developments, reminding himself why he had embarked on this journey. It wasn't just about exposing wrongdoing. It was about empowering people to hold their leaders accountable. If his efforts sparked change, even incremental, it would be worth every sacrifice. Still, the road ahead promised to be treacherous. Powerful entities wouldn't go down without a fight, and Elon knew the coming weeks would test his resolve like never before. Legal battles loomed on the horizon, with lawsuits threatening to drain resources and derail progress. Media outlets, aligned with Clinton's camp, worked tirelessly to discredit the investigation, spinning narratives that painted Elon as a reckless opportunist rather than a crusader for justice. Yet, despite the mounting pressure, Elon refused to back down. He reminded himself of the lessons learned along the way. That truth mattered no matter how uncomfortable it might be. And if those in power wanted to bury the truth so badly, it only strengthened his determination to expose it. One evening, as he sat alone in his office reviewing updates from his team, Elon allowed himself a rare moment of reflection. This journey had tested him in ways he never imagined. It had forced him to confront uncomfortable truths about power, greed, and human nature. But it had also shown him the resilience of ordinary people willing to stand up against injustice. Whatever happened next, he vowed to keep pushing forward, because sometimes the hardest battles were the ones worth fighting. And though the path remained fraught with obstacles, Elon knew one thing for sure. The truth deserved to see the light of day, and he would do whatever it took to ensure it did. The aftermath of Elon Musk's livestream expose was nothing short of seismic. The world, which had been divided before, now seemed to split wide open. Supporters hailed him as a modern-day hero, a man willing to risk everything to expose corruption at the highest levels. Critics, however, doubled down on their attacks, labeling him reckless, irresponsible, and politically motivated. For Elon, the days following the broadcast were a whirlwind of chaos, triumph, and danger, a relentless push and pull between vindication and retaliation. As the story dominated headlines, lawmakers scrambled to respond. Calls for investigations poured in from both sides of the aisle, though their motivations varied wildly. Some genuinely wanted answers, while others sought to exploit the scandal for political gain. Congressional hearings were announced, with subpoenas issued to key players named in the leaked documents. High-profile figures once untouchable found themselves under intense scrutiny, forced to defend their actions in front of cameras and microphones. Meanwhile, protesters took to the streets demanding accountability. In cities across America, chants of "No more secrets" echoed through crowded squares, as ordinary citizens joined the call for transparency. For Elon, The public reaction was both exhilarating and exhausting. On one hand, he felt a deep sense of satisfaction knowing that his efforts had sparked a national conversation about ethics in politics. On the other hand, the backlash was relentless. Powerful entities struck back with ferocity, deploying every tool at their disposal to discredit him and undermine the investigation. Anonymous trolls flooded social media with false narratives, accusing Elon of fabricating evidence or manipulating data. Mainstream news outlets ran segments questioning his credibility, often framing the scandal as a conspiracy theory rather than a legitimate issue warranting attention. Legal challenges quickly followed. Within days of the live stream, multiple lawsuits were filed against Elon and his team. Corporations implicated in the scandal launched defamation cases, claiming the allegations damaged their reputations. Politicians tied to Clinton's network accused Elon of violating privacy laws by releasing confidential documents. Lawyers warned him that these lawsuits could drag on for years, draining resources and distracting from the core mission. Yet, despite the mounting legal battles, Elon refused to back down. He knew the fight wouldn't be easy, but he also knew it was necessary. To counter the smear campaigns, Elon leaned heavily on his allies. Edward Snowden continued advising him on how to protect sensitive information, while Julian Assange helped strategize the release of additional documents. Together, they worked to ensure the narrative remained focused on the evidence rather than personal attacks. They rolled out new revelations in carefully timed increments, each piece reinforcing the broader case against Clinton's network. One particularly damning document detailed a quid pro quo arrangement between her foundation and a major defense contractor. Internal emails showed how millions in donations secured lucrative arms deals worth billions, deals brokered directly by Clinton during her time as Secretary of State. This revelation sent shockwaves through Washington. Lawmakers who had previously dismissed the scandal as baseless suddenly called for independent investigations. Even some of Clinton's staunchest supporters began distancing themselves, fearful of being associated with the growing controversy. Public pressure mounted, forcing institutions to act. Ethics committees convened emergency sessions, while watchdog groups demanded audits of Clinton's charitable foundation and campaign finances. But not everyone welcomed the scrutiny. Behind closed doors, powerful figures plotted their next moves. Corporate executives held secret meetings to coordinate responses, while lobbyists worked overtime to sway public opinion. Efforts to suppress the story intensified, with PR firms hired to plant doubt about Elon's motives. False reports spread online, painting him as unstable or driven by vendettas. Some even suggested he was using the scandal to distract from controversies surrounding Tesla and SpaceX. Despite the onslaught, Elon remained resolute. He reminded himself why he had started this journey: to shine a light where shadows lingered. Corruption thrived when good people stayed silent, and he refused to let fear dictate his actions. To stay ahead of his opponents, he adopted unconventional tactics. Instead of relying solely on traditional media, he turned to grassroots movements, engaging directly with supporters through social media. He hosted live Q&A sessions, answering questions about the investigation and addressing misconceptions head-on. His candid approach resonated with millions, earning him a loyal following of ordinary citizens inspired by his willingness to challenge authority. One particularly memorable moment came during a live Twitter Space event. A user asked Elon if he regretted any part of the investigation, given the risks involved. Without hesitation, he replied, "If I stopped because of fear, then what would that say about us? About our ability to hold power accountable? Yes, it's dangerous. Yes, it's exhausting. But if we don't do this, who will?" His words struck a chord, sparking widespread admiration and cementing his status as a symbol of resistance against entrenched systems. Yet the personal toll was undeniable. Sleepless nights became the norm, his mind racing with worst-case scenarios. Friends noticed the change in him, his usual confidence replaced by a quiet intensity, his sharp wit dulled by exhaustion. Even his family expressed concern, urging him to prioritize his safety. But Elon couldn't stop. Not now. Every setback only fueled his determination to see the fight through to the end. Amidst the chaos, moments of hope emerged. Ordinary citizens, inspired by Elon's actions, began organizing grassroots movements to demand greater transparency in politics. Activists launched petitions calling for reforms in campaign financing laws, urging lawmakers to address loopholes exploited by wealthy donors. Journalists revisited past stories, uncovering new scandals linked to Clinton's network. For the first time in years, the nation engaged in meaningful conversations about accountability and governance. Even within his own team, morale improved as they saw the impact of their work. Sarah, the data analyst who had grown frustrated earlier in the investigation, admitted she felt a renewed sense of purpose. "We're making a difference," she said during a late-night meeting. "It's messy and it's scary, but it's real, and that matters." Mark, the journalist, nodded in agreement. "Sometimes you have to take risks to move the needle," he added. "This is one of those times." By the end of this phase, Elon realized something profound. Exposing corruption wasn't just about tearing down bad systems. It was about building better ones. The scandal had revealed cracks in the foundation of democracy, but it had also shown the resilience of ordinary people willing to stand up against injustice. For every threat, there was an ally. For every lie, a truth waiting to be uncovered. As he sat alone in his office late one night, surrounded by stacks of papers and glowing screens, Elon allowed himself a rare moment of reflection. This journey had tested him in ways he never imagined. It had forced him to confront uncomfortable truths about power, greed, and human nature. But it had also reminded him why he fought so hard for innovation, not just in technology, but in transparency and accountability. Whatever happened next, he vowed to keep pushing forward, because sometimes the hardest battles were the ones worth fighting. And though the path remained fraught with obstacles, Elon knew one thing for sure. The truth deserved to see the light of day, and he would do whatever it took to ensure it did. The fallout from Elon Musk's expose of Hillary Clinton's lobbying scandal was nothing short of transformative. It reshaped politics, ignited fierce debates about ethics and governance, and left an indelible mark on society. For weeks after the live-streamed broadcast, the world remained gripped by the unfolding drama. Every headline, every interview, every protest seemed to echo the same question: what happens now? As the dust began to settle, the true impact of Elon's actions became clear, not just for him personally, but for the nation and its future. In the immediate aftermath, investigations dominated the news cycle. Congressional hearings were convened, with lawmakers grilling key figures tied to Clinton's network. Some resigned under pressure, unable to withstand the scrutiny. Others fought back vehemently, accusing Elon of fabricating evidence or cherry-picking facts to fit a narrative. Legal battles raged on multiple fronts, draining resources and testing the resolve of everyone involved. Yet despite the chaos, progress was undeniable. New legislation aimed at increasing transparency in campaign financing gained traction, fueled by public outrage over the revelations. Lawmakers who had previously resisted such reforms found themselves cornered, forced to act or risk losing voter trust. For Elon, the experience was both triumphant and exhausting. On one hand, he achieved his goal of exposing corruption and sparking change. His name became synonymous with accountability, inspiring millions to demand better from their leaders. Grassroots movements sprang up across the country, calling for stricter regulations on lobbying, campaign contributions, and conflicts of interest. Journalists revisited old stories, uncovering additional scandals that had been swept under the rug. The national conversation shifted from apathy and cynicism to engagement and action. But on the other hand, the personal cost was immense. Sleepless nights turned into months of relentless stress. Friends and family worried about his well-being, urging him to step back and focus on his health. Anonymous threats continued to pour in, some more sinister than others. Security measures around his properties tightened further, creating a sense of isolation that weighed heavily on him. Even his businesses, Tesla, SpaceX, and Neuralink, felt the strain. Critics seized on the controversy to question his judgment, arguing that his obsession with the scandal distracted him from innovation. Stock prices fluctuated as investors grew wary of potential legal liabilities. Despite these challenges, Elon refused to retreat. He understood that fighting corruption came with risks, but he also believed the rewards outweighed the costs. Speaking during a rare press conference, he addressed the backlash head-on. "Yes, it's hard," he said, his voice steady but tinged with exhaustion. "Yes, it's dangerous. But if we don't hold power accountable, then what are we fighting for?" Transparency isn't just a buzzword. It's the foundation of democracy. And I won't stop until we have it. His words resonated deeply with supporters, many of whom saw him as a modern-day crusader against entrenched systems. Ordinary citizens inspired by his courage began organizing protests, filing petitions, and pushing for reforms at local and national levels. Activists launched campaigns to educate voters about the influence of money in politics, using Elon's investigation as a case study. Schools incorporated discussions about ethical leadership into their curriculums, encouraging students to think critically about power dynamics. The ripple effects of his actions extended far beyond the original scandal, sparking a cultural shift toward greater accountability. Yet, not everyone viewed Elon's efforts positively. Detractors accused him of overstepping boundaries, claiming his methods undermined due process and jeopardized innocent lives. Some argued that his crusade was politically motivated, driven by personal vendettas rather than genuine concern for justice. Media outlets aligned with Clinton's camp worked tirelessly to discredit him, spinning narratives that painted him as reckless and opportunistic. Lawsuits continued to pile up, threatening to drain his resources and derail his businesses. Even within his own team, tensions simmered as fatigue set in. Mark, the journalist, admitted during a private meeting that he sometimes questioned whether they'd bitten off more than they could chew. "We've exposed the truth," he said. "But at what cost?" Elon acknowledged the toll the investigation had taken, not just on himself, but on those around him. He knew the sacrifices made along the way couldn't be undone. Yet he also believed the fight was worth it. Corruption thrived when good people stayed silent, and he refused to let fear dictate his actions. In moments of doubt, he reminded himself of the lessons learned throughout this journey. He had seen firsthand how powerful forces operated, how they manipulated systems, silenced dissenters, and protected their interests at all costs. But he had also witnessed the resilience of ordinary people willing to stand up against injustice. That gave him hope. As time passed, the scandal faded from the front pages, replaced by new headlines and fresh controversies, but its legacy endured. Reforms introduced in response to the exposé strengthened safeguards against corruption, though gaps remained. Politicians grew more cautious about accepting donations from questionable sources, knowing their actions could come under scrutiny. Journalists adopted stricter standards for investigative reporting, inspired by the meticulous work of Elon's team. Even corporations reevaluated their lobbying practices, aware that transparency was no longer optional. For Elon, life slowly returned to a semblance of normalcy. He resumed focusing on his companies, channeling his energy into projects that pushed humanity forward. Tesla rolled out groundbreaking innovations in electric vehicles, while SpaceX achieved milestones in space exploration. Yet the experience left an indelible mark on him. It taught him humility, patience, and the importance of perseverance in the face of adversity. He emerged wiser, more grounded, and deeply committed to using his platform for good. One evening, as he sat alone in his office reflecting on the past year, Elon allowed himself a rare moment of pride. This journey had tested him in ways he never imagined. It had forced him to confront uncomfortable truths about power, greed, and human nature, but it had also shown him the strength of ordinary people united by a common cause. Whatever happened, next he vowed to keep shining a light where shadows lingered, to remind the world that no one was above accountability. And so, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over his desk, Elon smiled faintly. The road ahead would undoubtedly bring new challenges, new battles to fight. But for now he felt at peace knowing he had done his part, because sometimes the hardest fights were the ones worth winning. And in this case, the truth had prevailed. Not perfectly, not completely, but enough to make a difference.